Okay, let's do a sleeper, a breakout, and a bust among the second-year wide receivers. My favorite sleeper is blank, Dave.
I think my favorite sleeper is going to end up being Jalen Hyatt, who is profiling as certainly a deep threat for the Giants, but also somebody who could develop and be a little bit more than that. I was impressed with some of his flashes. Certainly liked him in college at Tennessee, even though he didn't run a full route tree, but he should have an offseason where he works on his routes a little bit more, maybe puts on a little bit of weight. I know we talk about that and say that that's a bad thing, more so for running backs and wide receivers. But I think that Jalen Hyatt does have potential. And when I look at him, I think about him as a sleeper, somebody that I'm taking late anyway. So if the first 3 weeks of the season come and he doesn't do anything, Daniel Jones isn't connecting with him, then forget it. I'm out. But I do like the idea of getting him on my bench.
All right, Jalen Hyatt. Jamie, who's your favorite sleeper?
Demario Douglas. I think you see the Patriots receiving core is pretty abysmal right now, and he's got the chance to be hopefully their second guy. They're gonna go out and get somebody, whether again in the draft or free agency, and they should, because they're going to get a young quarterback and hopefully build around that quarterback. But I think Douglas is going to be locked in one of their top 3 roles, hopefully their slot role, and I could see him being one of these guys that we hyped up a little bit at times during his rookie campaign and having a sophomore breakout.
All right. How about, speaking of breakouts, then my favorite breakout sophomore receiver is blank.
Me?
Sure, whoever.
Smith and Jigba. That's the obvious one. I mean, you just want to see him get the opportunity that we've been waiting for and, taking advantage of it, because I think he will. We saw at times last year when Metcalf was banged up or Lockett was banged up, he stepped up in a bigger role, certainly when he was playing on the outside, had a chance to be a very successful fantasy option. And I think that's going to be the case this year. Tyler Lockett's 31. Would make sense that they move on from him or at least put him in a reduced role if he does come back. But obviously JSN, when you asked who's the second sophomore receiver that could be drafted, would not be surprised if the Chiefs add players and the JSN hype puts him ahead of Tank Dell potentially. He's got that much upside.
All right, I'll go to Dave in a second, but let's talk about, so Jackson Smith and Jigba, pretty underwhelming rookie season. He played 17 games and he had 628 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. Jamie mentioned playing on the outside. He was really confined to the slot almost 2/3 of his snaps, maybe more like 60% of his snaps. And I noticed, I think I said this last week or whenever, the 3 games with his highest percentage of snaps on the outside were his 3 highest yardage games of the season. So yes, I'd love to see Tyler Lockett gone. I'd love to see JSN playing on the outside. But what if he's not? What if it's the same? What if it's just rinse, repeat? Can he really break out? Can he really have even 1,000 yards, which would be a pretty big jump from 628?
I don't think he'll be a breakout candidate if Tyler Lockett's there, but he still could have a 1,000-yard season and be more productive, just because I think that they will start to put him in those situations to be more successful and give him more targets and give him more opportunities. I mean, it just makes sense. Again, you have a 31-year-old guy who is not part of their future. This is their future. Their future for the next 3 to 5 years is DK Metcalf and JSN leading the receiving core. And so, unless they're going to tank in 2024 to, get draft picks and find the next quarterback of the future, if they're going to be a competitive team and Geno Smith stays healthy, then I think JSN takes a step forward in some way, shape, or form. But to be a breakout, it's got to be with Tyler Lockett most likely gone.
Dave, who's your favorite breakout at the position?
Can we call Jaden Reed a breakout? Can he do better than what he did this past season? He averaged over 13 PPR points last year, 13.6. His last 8 games, 17.4 PPR points. I'd like to see him become the number 1 target for Jordan Love in Green Bay. I think he's the most versatile of the wide receivers that they have. I think he can do anything that they ask him to do. Is he as fast as Christian Watson? No. Is he as tall as Christian Watson? No. Can he be healthier than Christian Watson? Pretty much everybody can. And Romeo Doubs has been good. He stepped up in the playoffs. That game against Dallas was amazing. But I'd like to see Jaden Reed become that main target and that number 1 guy. And I wonder if he takes the kind of step forward that Jamie talked about for JSN. But he kind of already did last year, but he could do it again and take that next step and finish the year as a top 12 wide receiver.
All right, I want to give me a moment here. I just look up the stats for Jaden Reed.
Well, you could just put him in my next category.
Oh, you're going to call him a bust?
Yeah, he was awful when everybody was healthy. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just looked at the playoff games. Yeah, like 4 targets in the playoffs or something. Or maybe
I
7.
think he was
It was
hurt.
every
I think
time
part of
Christian
that was he
Watson
was
was out.
not 100%.
7 targets. Oh,
Every
he did.
time Christian Watson was out, he was a superstar.
Yeah.
I think he
But at
got
the same time, I mean, great advanced metrics, or good at least. I think we're going to talk about him on Beyond the Box Score. Good season. Watson gets hurt all the time, right? You know, it's like the 49ers. It's like, well, when they're all healthy, but they're never all healthy.
Yeah, I agree with what Dave said. He definitely has the most upside of the group. But unfortunately, if you're just looking at what he accomplished last season, everything for him was perfect when when somebody was missing. Mostly Watson. When Watson came back, his numbers went in the tank.
Okay. All right, and Dave, who's a bust for you? So wait, all right, hold on. So Jaden Reed will be a bust. That's what Jamie's saying. When would you draft him? What do you what do you think his value should be?
I would draft him as early as round 7.
Okay, Dave.
yeah, I'd love to get him done.
Right, but I don't think you necessarily could.
No, he went higher than JSN in our first 2 PPR mocks, and JSN
But that won't be the case if
at the
Lockett's gone.
6-7 turn.
No, that won't be the case if Lockett's gone. Right.
Right.
Dave, who will be a bust for you?
It's the same kind of argument that Jamie made for Jaden Reed, but I'll do it for Jordan Addison. In the first 5 games of this year, Cousins was there, Justin Jefferson was there. He averaged 12.4 PPR points per game. When Cousins was on the field and there was no Justin Jefferson, it's a small sample, it's 3 games, 21.5 PPR points per game. That's what I think fantasy managers, they remember those games when Jefferson wasn't around. Addison worked as the number 1 guy. He was awesome. But if Jefferson's there, if Cousins is back, I'm a little worried about that target crunch hitting Addison and him maybe being a little too overdrafted.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the thing that benefits Addison hopefully tremendously is TJ Hawkinson not being there for the start of the season. And so that should be a huge advantage depending on how long Hawkinson is out. I think Addison's going to have another solid sophomore campaign. I don't think people are drafting him based on those 3 games. I think they're drafting him based on what he did with Cousins and what he did when Jefferson's there. I think if anybody's looking at those 3 games, they're making a huge mistake.
Right. But then we're looking at the 5 games with Cousins and Jefferson, and he had some good moments, no question, but still 12.4 PPR points. Is that a round 5 wide receiver?
Well, it's a round 5 wide receiver projecting him to get better in his sophomore season. That's what anybody should be doing.
I think
we can do that for all these guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are good. A lot of them are going to get better. Remember, he's one of the 900-yard guys. And in those 5 games, Jordan Addison we're talking about here, in those 5 games, TJ Hawkinson had, 39 targets. So that I would be a little worried about Addison, being like a top 15. Let's compare him to T. Higgins, right? Because you're hoping for Jefferson is Jamar Chase and Addison is T. Higgins, a really solid number 2. I'd be worried about it if Hawkinson were healthy. In fact, I think it would be pretty hard to accomplish because usually when you see 2 top 15 wide receivers on the same team, there is not a third guy taking a lot of targets. That's why I was a little worried about
you think people are drafting Addison as a top 15 receiver?
No, but I think not at all. But I think you're hoping that he gets there, right? You're drafting him hoping that he can be. Like, why should I not draft Jordan Addison thinking, oh, he could be the next Devontae Smith, he could be the next T. Higgins?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to hope for that, but if you're drafting him that way, then you're making a mistake.
No, absolutely not. I'm just talking about his upside, and I do think that's his upside. But I think Hawkinson would limit it. But I'm not expecting a ton from Hawkinson, especially early in the year. So I think if Cousins comes back and it's Jefferson, Addison, and either a Hawkinson on IR for a bit or coming off the ACL, I think Addison could be great. I'm optimistic about it. No, you don't draft him as a top 15 guy, but you should at least be thinking, does he have that upside? And to me, the answer is, how much is TJ Hawkinson playing? How good is he? How many targets is he getting, basically? And also, you have to ask that about Cousins. You understand?
I love the setup for him if Cousins is healthy.
Right.